version 14, we're introducing something new called magnetic timeline, and we're deprecating ripple edit and ripple delete. So how does that affect what you're doing? If you are the type of person that drags a picture down to the timeline and you don't have this new feature engaged, you can place your picture anywhere. You can accidentally place it on top of another picture, cutting it in half, whatever, the typical mistakes. You will also note that the enable snap to timeline icon has been moved from this area over here down to this collection right here, where the ripple edit and delete icon used to be, the links. So if we engage this and we drag something down to the timeline, we get the neat lines where it's going to be inserted. And again, we don't have the magnetic line engaged. So what we do is we actually just delete the picture that's there. We'll use Control-Z to reverse out of that. Perhaps it's better if I just drag it down over this picture, which is different than the others. And oops, I left it too high, but we put it down there, and we can see we didn't move anything. So just to keep track of things, I have put a little marker on the timeline to indicate the beginning of each one of these pictures that are on the other line, so that we can get a feel for it. Again, we will just do Control-Z, and remove it out of there. Okay, anyway, that's the Snap to. If we use the Snap to, we then get the guidelines, which we don't get when we're using without the Snap to guideline included. All right, so now we're going to engage the magnetic timeline. Now, this mainly only affects, well, it in ways only affects track 1. It doesn't act on any of the other ones. But let's start with the fact that I'm going to try to place it over here. I can no longer do that. It will always bring it back or snap it in place. However, when I do move it within, you can see that I get a little parking space underneath where I'm going to place it, and so we can see what's going to be affected and what's not going to be affected. It's going to, just like ripple edit, it's going to move things to fit it into place. We can move it over here again with this other picture. We're going to put it behind it, and we can see that it fit right nicely into there. It didn't move any of the other things over here, so let's just do this. We'll take it out. We will go Shift End, move to the last frame after the picture above, and then what we will do is we will move this in, and we can see that we are now moving it. We're moving the timeline over. It wasn't quite as visible in the earlier illustrations. So we'll just do Control-Z again and eliminate that. Now we'll activate the last feature, and that is the link feature. The link feature is like the ripple in that it synchronizes all of the tracks. So if we take this same image and we start moving around here, we can now see what's going to be moved. As soon as I move it past a picture on another track, that will also be included. And as we move it forward, we can see that it now affects those two. Now, interestingly here, I deliberately place this on top of 2 images. So if I move it over one here from behind, it doesn't move. If I move it beyond the start of that, then it does include. Ripple edit and ripple delete did the same thing if you were spanning timelines. Now, here we'll move it past these others, and you can see as we move past them, what's going to get moved. Anything to the right of where I'm trying to place the picture is going to get shifted over. Okay, so if I decide to do it here, all of these things have shifted over, and you can tell that they no longer match the position of where I had each of these other prior to that. We'll do Control-Z and reverse it, and there we go again. Now it's one more feature here that's pretty cool. If we take something and we move it up, let's say we want to move our titles up further, we can move it up one more line. But when we have the magnetic timeline and the link engaged, it's going to swallow up any empty lines. We don't have to go in manually and delete empty tracks. So you can see I'm taking something from track 3 and I'm moving it up above. It's going to generate track 4. But what's going to happen is we're going to still just have 2. Perhaps this would be clearer if I move this image 1, 2 up. Okay, in this case we now have 4 tracks. Okay, use Control Z, move it back. What if we move this down? Then it's just going to stay there. So Control Z again. All right, so that's basically how that works. Now, if you were one of those people that inserted things, first of all, we're going to take this timeline snap off. But if you were the type of person that used the plus sign to insert something, then it's not the magnetic timeline, even though it's engaged, isn't going to work for you. It's going to plop that right in there. So let's see what happens when we click it right here. Okay, first of all, it moved it up to track 3, which we didn't want to do, so we'll do Control Z. We will click here, double click, and let's move it over a little bit, and let's click on a picture. And here we get this nasty effect, which is the picture that was in between has now been split. And that wasn't the effect. So be careful if you're using the plus sign and you do not have it engaged, snapping to the timeline, or snapping to the timeline engage is what I meant to say. So let's just reverse and remove that from there. Control Z reverses our option. So that's what all of those things are about. Now, you say, well, gee, I'm more comfortable with the old ripple edit, ripple delete. Okay, let's say that you don't really want to have this magnetic timeline feature enabled down here, and you would still like to use your old ripple edit and delete. You can do that by going into the toolbar menu. These are the tools on the toolbar menu. This is the toolbar menu. When we click this icon, however, we get to see that we still have enable ripple edit and delete. So we can place it right up there. Now, the other neat thing, though, is we can arrange all of these icons in the order in which we like them, or whatever, if we prefer working from the left. So we can slide this over as far as this little line here, and it will be right there, and we hit save. Now we have put back our old ripple edit and delete icon. And we'll notice that when we engage that, this becomes disengaged, not this one, but these two. So we engage our old ripple edit and delete. This turns white, which means it's off, and this is grayed out because it's not available as long as that's not turned on. So this is how you can revert until you get used to using the new the magnetic timeline versus the ripple. And if you disengage this, it doesn't necessarily turn this on, so you would have to turn it on manually. Otherwise, you are going without the magnetic. So who knows, maybe they'll change those in the future. But that's the difference between magnetic timeline and ripple